Hi, it's Kevin May from PhocusWire, joined by Bobby Healy, the ex-CTO of Car Trawler and now the CEO and founder of Manna. Manna from Heaven is a drone delivery service.
For those that don't figure it out on their own.
For those that don't get it. But we're not going to talk about that. I mean, the reason why we wanted to get you in here today is because, you know, you've been fairly vocal over many years, you and a couple of others, about just the role of Google, the influence of Google in the digital travel space. And we just thought it would be good to actually get a more kind of structured view rather than a series of tweets and, you know,
angry tweets
and questions in a conference. And just kind of, if you could just talk us through it.
Yeah. So
explain why you're so vociferous about it.
I'm quite an opinionated person
yes.
Right? But this goes right to the strategic moves for the entire industry, right? The entire travel technology industry. And it starts for me with the airlines. So you go back, 7 or 8 years ago when Google bought ITA Software. And at the heart of Google's mission in our space, in travel technology space, is that their belief, and they're quite vocal about it, is where intermediaries don't add value, they will enter that space. And they formed that view around flight search when they bought ITA Software. That was the incarnation of that view, was the purchase of ITA, and it was a simple premise that they believe they can do a better job at serving up aggregated content information than the current industry players can, right? And that's fair enough, right? That's a normal startup could form that view and go for it, right? In a natural competitive environment. The problem when you have not just someone the size of Google with the pockets they have, the real problem starts when you have monopoly, right? Because they launched a product that was grossly inferior to, for example, Kayak or any of the big industry players, and yet it still survives today. Now, as it turns out, it's a very good product, right?
Yeah, it's super. It's on a par with Kayak in terms of the amount of use as well.
Correct. So the problem is regulation and competition commission. It takes a long time to get there. And in the meantime, that's a business that shouldn't have survived the natural competitive dynamic of industry, right?
Right.
So it's funded. And then when the time is right, Google are just allowed to ram it in the top of the customer funnel and replace anything that they want. And where that's a real problem is, look at the long-term view of this as an investor, right? So I would do a bit of my own investing, but I also work with a lot of VCs and private equity firms. And the music is the same everywhere you go now. Is tell me how you're going to grow a business that Google ultimately won't be interested in. And that's it, right? So there's a terminal stop when you say, we're in a space that is going to be so big that Google will be interested in it, because then you're not investable. You're no longer investable,
right? When
that's the case.
What do you think suppliers are saying though? Let's keep the aviation conversation part of this then. So airlines, what do they think? They probably don't care, do they?
So airlines, every one of them are worried, and I've Car Trawler, my role at Car Trawler, we work with, not an advertisement, but over 100 airlines,
lots of
right?
the car rental for
and we've super relationships with them, and they're kind of strategic relationships. So that I would have direct conversation with CEOs of the airlines or the chief marketing officers about this subject, and they would reach out to me to get me over to just talk about Google and the Google. They don't call it the Google threat, but talk to us about strategy. Here's what we're doing, and just an open discussion, right? And every one of them worries, but every one of them also says, it's no problem, we can switch it off anytime we want. We don't need Google. It's a small part of our traffic, all that stuff. It's exactly the same argument that people formed about GDSs 40 years ago. They love the distribution. They see it potentially as a problem in the future, and one day, if they need to, they'd switch it off. The difference with flight search or Google is that it's a one-way thing, right? I said this in the old Angry Man blog I wrote. It is like a tattoo. Once Google get to critical mass in the market, i.e. when the consumer is satisfied with the product, the consumer will never move off that product. And Google have the power to ensure that, right? They provide so much value to the consumer in terms of tracking, relative offers, relative products, synchronizing across all your devices. It's a compelling product for the consumer, right? So once in a market that they roll the product out, and once they satisfy enough of consumers' requirements, the consumer is they're going to take kayak customers, they're going to take TripAdvisor, they're going to take customers from everyone else.
But the point is if the airlines are still, if they're paying the same commission to Google that they ordinarily would have done to kayak or to an OTA, and they're still getting all the bums on the seats on the plane,
but they're not.
Do they fundamentally care?
Look at Google's revenue per booking in the airspace. Skift did an article on this. An analyst in there did something that was really good, but net is the Google is growing. It's whatever 120 billion now, arguably 15 to 20 in the travel space. To feed that monster, you need to keep growing, right? And they've been growing their revenue per airline booking every year since ITA Software started up, right? And that revenue per booking right now, it fits, right? Because the OTAs and the top of funnel players are willing to pay to acquire that traffic and continually pay more and more until it's the end of the road, right? So the OTAs are buying airline traffic because that's top of the funnel, and that's how they're selling their hotels, right? And it works currently, right? It's an uneasy but working relationship. But at some point it breaks, right? And the level of fragmentation in the hotel market supports a much wider commission base. So that currently comes from the hotel space, right? So the OTAs and co, their profitability is funded by hotels, right? At some point that reaches, an equilibrium where you can't go any further. The hotel simply can't pay any more. Now where does Google go for its revenue growth? It goes back up the top of the funnel to the airlines. And so they've built a platform that's irreplaceable at the top, which means that airlines will be dependent on Google for distribution.
Right.
Now what happens, right? So
when is the breaking point then, Bobby, for airlines, do you think?
It's hard to call. For airlines, it's not a breaking point for airlines. The breaking point is actually with Priceline, with Expedia, with those guys. When the analyst starts to call out the long-term business model question, right?
Yep.
Is where is the value in a company like Expedia or Priceline that bases its entire marketing platform off a partner that is willing to threaten their entire business?
Yeah, it's 10.6 billion, the pair of them spent Booking Holdings and Expedia last year on
But that's money well spent now, right? Because they're running profitably, right? Yeah, well, I mean, they're buying traffic, right? That's fine, right? But when you're buying traffic off someone that's pointing a big gun at your face and has an absolute intent to replace you, where is the investable value in that stock over the long term? So it's when those questions start to get asked by, hedge funds, by whoever's holding that stock, then you have to say, right, explain to me what is Google's strategy, because ultimately that's the long-term threat to value in the industry. And their long-term strategy is maximize where they are now with the current stack and then go back up to the airline stack and start maximizing the revenue in that space. And you only have to look at the US. Look at the US, right? Do a search for Delta Airlines.
Yep.
You will find flight search and paid brand ads returned by Google. Then do a search for American Airlines. You will see no paid content. So Google can choose literally who's being forced to pay for a brand click and who's not.
Right.
What kind of power is that in an industry where you have the two of the biggest airlines that carry all the traffic in the biggest country in terms of aviation in the world, and Google are calling the shots with an inferior product?
Right.
How's that possible? That's what a monopoly does.
Yeah. So I mean, what happens? Is it the industry just kind of waking up and smelling Bobby's coffee that you've been talking about and trying to sort it out? Is it a regulatory issue? Because regulators try and clip the nails of Google all the time, and then they just kind of like dust themselves down and move on and think of a different way. So what do they do?
I mean, Marguerite Vestager, the EU Competition Commissioner, is brilliant, and she, very determined in all areas, right, in terms of regulation. The EU have led the way, but it's still hugely ineffective. It's not slowed down in any way what they're doing, right? A fine is embarrassing. What they're really worried about is being broken up. The solution here is they have to be forced to divest themselves of flight search.
Right.
For our space, right? That's the only remedy that fixes this. And that's one that's doable, right? So the one I would call out for, forget about fines, they don't work. They've been fined 7 billion and they've rolling out brand new products that are going after the entire segment again. So the fines don't work. They're not laughing about them. They're taking them seriously. Of course they are, but they're totally ineffective. The only remedy that makes the travel technology sector investable again is a divestiture of flight search.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't be a bad thing, because actually flight search could be an excellent product on its own, competing on its own, right?
Right. So just to wrap us up then, I mean, what is the likelihood in your estimation that might actually happen? Give us on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is definitely going to happen.
But the timing might be years away. Probably is years away. I think it's a certainty.
But by then, user behavior may have changed, and the way they just do everything may have changed.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of industry analysts would say, the long-term thinkers would say, every monopoly comes down eventually. And they point to Standard Oil, Ma Bell, all that stuff. There's never been an engineering company as effective as Google at getting things done.
Just on that, with the emergence of another type of platform that has the exposure and the brand of Google, let's say Amazon, because that's what everyone talks about. With the emergence of them to give them some serious competition, perhaps change this. If they got it right,
I don't see how. It's the key thing here is the search monopoly.
Right.
I mean, customers always
But from a
search.
Product search perspective, Amazon is kind of starting to have that role, isn't it? Because they do so much.
Yeah, they do, but they're a different beast. I don't see. I mean, Amazon are obviously incredibly effective company, but I just can't see them doing flight search. Flight search is hard, right? That's why Google bought ITA, right? I just think it's too. You need to get really super deep into the nuances of travel to do it well, and it's taken Google, and Google are pretty bloody good and well funded. It's taken them now 6 years to get ITA right. So I don't see that anyone. I'd more look at Airbnb. They've hired Fred Reed. They've serious intent in that space, and they have also serious incentive to address this problem, right?
Yep. Okay.
Look at Airbnb, not Amazon.
I'd like us to talk in a couple of years' time and see where we are with things, Bobby Healy.
I'll play a $10 bet with you.
Well, you could drop you in with the drone or something like that. So, Bobby Healy, thank you very much.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.